Members, I'm going to reconvene our committee and bring House File 50 back up. That's where we left off. That's Representative Hornstein. Representative Hornstein, where we left off was there was still some testifying that was going on. I think the gentleman I had offered, Mr. Hallier, to finish his testimony. So perhaps, sir, if you can come forward and do that, and then we'll see if anyone else wants to testify. And then hopefully we'll take questions and then move to a vote. Welcome back, Mr. Hallier. Please restate your name for the record and give us, finish your testimony, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Brett Collier.
Collier.
From Big Lake.
Mr. Collier, how do you spell your last name?
Collier.
Yeah. Thank you.
First name Brett, B-R-E-T.
Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Collier.
I believe where I left off was there is another bill in the House, House File 104, that wishes to increase the current $50 fine to at least $150 and then up to $500 for third offense, with the Senate version wanting to actually revoke your license for a period of time following the third offense. This is a sound and logical path that Minnesota should be taking. This is an increase in both the penalty and deterrent for the actions which are actually causing distracted driving deaths. But let me remind you, if both this hands-free bill and the increased fines bill were to pass this session, you are going to be charging people who are simply holding the phones to their ear a penalty of at least $150 and possibly revoking their license for performing an activity that, again, statistically is not a major contributor to distracted driving deaths here in Minnesota. What are the proponents not telling you? The proponents continue to tout that there are 13 of 14 states, although I guess the flyer that's in the back has says 12 of 15 states now, in which, when they implemented a hands-free bill, have seen a drop in distracted driving deaths. What they fail to tell you is that in Vermont, for example, they instituted both a statewide ban on texting and driving at the same time they instituted a ban on hands-free. So you simply can't point at the hands-free ban as the sole reason for the drop in deaths. So what other facts are the supporters of this bill leaving out? It's been recently reported that the average number of distracted driving deaths from 2012 through 2017 in Minnesota was 53 per year. I got that out of the Star Tribune. Besides this being a drop from the 2015 number of 74 deaths, remember, when I'm talking 53 deaths, 74 deaths, we're talking about all types of distracted driving deaths, not just ones involving the use of a phone. Please don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. Please use your common sense and the data. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Collier. Are there any questions for Mr. Collier? If not, then thank you, sir. Thank you for hanging around and finishing your testimony. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Is there anyone, I do know that Representative Miller has a question. He's on top of my list, but I want to make sure there are any other testifiers on this bill. Please come forward. Welcome to the committee. Our practice is to state your name for the record and then give us your testimony.
My name is Yark Tikalski. Last name Tikalsky. So, as I just said, my name is Yark Tikalski. I'm from New Prague, and I'm 16 years old, and I have had my license for a little under a year. Since my grandpa Joe was killed in 2015 by a mom who was texting her daughter, I, along with my family, have been working to make our roads safer. We've spoken at high school assemblies, to driver's ed classes, and testified at the state capitol. I'm very frustrated with how long it has taken the state of Minnesota to make a decision that 17 other states have made. My family has been testifying for almost 4 years now, some families for almost a decade. Every year we've come across a loophole or a new obstacle. Watching the hearing on TV today, we heard from representatives' concerns about racial profiling. I think it's unfair to stop someone because of their background. But if they are holding a phone while driving, they are breaking the law. I can't tell you if the driver who killed my grandpa is Irish, German, or Jewish, but I can tell you that grandpa won't be at my graduation next year. Distracted drivers do not discriminate. Every year, our messages have been the same. We provide you with facts and statistics, and we tell you our sad stories and show you our loved ones' faces. The only thing that does change is the number of Minnesotans that are killed due to distracted driving. The members in our club continue to grow. Now we are hearing some legislators think it would be okay to hold a phone for GPS uses, even though the phone tells you where to turn next. I'm 16 and I know 2 hands on the wheel is safer than 1. Please don't give drivers another excuse to hold their phones. Please pass a clean, hands-free bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tukowski, and please accept my condolences and our sorrow for your loss. I believe I speak on behalf of our entire committee, and I take it that's Grandpa Joe's picture there behind us.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we're ready for questions then. Representative Hornstein and Chair Hornstein. Representative Miller has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair Hornstein. I think I had a conversation with the chair. We kind of ran into each other in the hallway, and I just want to reiterate just a couple brief things that I said. I think first of all, on a bill that, as you're right, seems to be a lot simpler than we seem to be making it, but I think your bill is heading very strongly in the right direction. I also know that there's some other bills that are coming down. One of the things that I've realized is, in my opinion, we all agree that we don't want people that are distracted driving because they become, as we talked about drunk driving the other day, become a weapon, right? And a very terrible thing happens. So I'm very sorry for your loss and the losses of the others. The question that I have, it doesn't need to affect how your bill moves forward, but I don't know if Mr. Chair, if there's other bills moving forward or as we move forward and discuss this. The other night, or last night, when we were talking about the exceptions in one of the bills we were talking about, we listed them, and there was that discussion about how when we start listing, we end up missing things when we start listing. And so when it comes to this, by far and away, things related to the cell phone are causing the most distracted driving problems. But that doesn't dismiss the fact that we have other forms of distracted driving. Some of them may be more serious than others. You know, maybe a cup isn't as serious for one person as it might be a hot cup of coffee for another, spilled on their lap or something like that. Is there a way, Mr. Chair, as we move forward, the one thing, and I totally get the issue related to phones. I get it, because it's clear and present, and it's a huge deal. But is there a way, perhaps, that we can empower law enforcement to make a determination that someone was distracted driving and have things associated with the fact that it was distracted driving and not necessarily just the tool by which they were being distracted by? I don't know if that makes sense to you of what I'm trying to say, but this will take, we have something that's not hands-free, and I'm not asking you to change this bill at all, but we're addressing one problem, but I can tell you the hot cup of coffee or that spills or a dog on your lap or some of these other things are kind of some legitimate things as well. And I just think, again, in context, I hate to be redundant on this, but just to be clear, you know, when we make a list of things, we miss things on the list. Is there a way that we can empower law enforcement? So I don't know if it's to you or to you, but if someone can kind of respond to that, that'd be helpful.
Mr. Chair, I can answer that.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. Let's start with the author of the bill. And then I believe our lead, Johnson, has some thoughts, and I have some quick thoughts as well. Chair Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Miller. That's a good question. I think there is a law that I think does cover all the things that you had mentioned. And there is some discretion for law enforcement if they see that kind of activity and they see, you know, drivers that are not obeying basic traffic laws. But we did, I authored the texting bill in 2008, and this very issue came up on the House floor. And my response, Mr. Chairman, Representative Miller, is that I think the texting and cell phone use are sort of in a category among themselves. And I say that because they are proliferating at such a high rate that this is really the number one form of distraction on our roadways. And what we're doing with this bill is, I think, enhancing this is really just adding on to that texting law in a sense. It is, as the gentleman who just testified pointed out, same penalties. We're not changing the penalties, et cetera. Maybe that's a separate conversation that what we can have with Representative Detmer's bill. But I do believe the things that you were mentioning are covered currently.
Okay.
Thank you. And Representative Johnson, I think you have something you want to add to this as well.
Mr. Chair, as far as the accident reports go, the last time I saw an accident report, and it just had distracted driving. They would have to put a category on that form for cell phone use and texting. And I'd like, if they did that, I think it would be great. We'd actually get real good information, but it needs to be distinctive between cell phone use and texting or data use. That way we'd get a true indication whether it's talking on the phone or actual texting or looking stuff up. But it could be done on the state accident report form, but that's something the state would have to put into the system.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's an excellent suggestion. I appreciate that.
Very well. Are there any other questions? Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, it's unfortunate that we've added what I deem as a rather controversial, I know it didn't mean to be controversial, but it is rather controversial piece that the previous testifier kind of referenced when we were talking about gender, we're talking about ethnicity and race, the study portion. And I would just ask, I've kind of stated my piece about why it's controversial, the fact that we're using the word gender when that's not even on our driver's license. It's the word sex. Gender is not defined in statute. Sex is. Gender could mean a multiplicity of things. We had a committee hearing yesterday or the day before. Was that just yesterday, I think?
I think it was this morning.
That was this morning. Wow. Oh. That tells you how long we've been here,
I feel you.
talking so much about gender and what that means and what it doesn't mean. My ask would be if we could change the word back to sex, which is actually what is on our driver's license, which is something that when a state trooper does pull up, I actually did a ride along just a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago now, with a state trooper, and they have all that data right there. It's right on your driver's license. It's something that can be easily pulled up. Gender's not. Gender is something you're going to have to ask the person, how do they identify? It's much more complicated. I have concerns about the race, ethnicity, and all of that as well in the study. And I understand you're trying to get at someone's perception. I feel like we're going backwards. I mean, you've got all this implicit bias training. The officers are trying to be neutral on everything, and now we're saying, no, now pay attention to it. So I just feel like we're going backwards, and I just ask that we can maybe consider that. And I realize that this bill has another stop, and it's coming back to judiciary, so we'll be talking about this again. But I just wanted to point that out, that this bill that we want to be so supportive of has now become controversial in my view.
Thank you, Representative O'Neill, and obviously the author of the bill is hearing the testimony, and will consider the comments of this committee if the bill proceeds. I must say, as someone who moved the author of the bill, that there's nothing about this study that stops the bill from doing what it should do, which is to be real clear with the public, it seems to me, to be real clear that it will be a violation to use a cell phone while you're driving, and that will be an actionable cause for being stopped and for having our justice system then take the steps that we do when people violate the law. I see the author nodding his head. I don't think you would have accepted an amendment that would have gutted or weakened your attempt to make the public safe in this regard. But certainly you've heard the testimony here, Representative Hornstein, if there's a better way to do things, that is our duty as legislators as we move legislation forward. Are there any other questions? Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to, I guess, build on and reiterate what you were saying, Mr. Chair, that I really view the addition of that amendment as being a really helpful thing, that really strengthening an already very strong bill. I just want to emphasize the point that, and this is one of the reasons I really resisted the secondary amendment, is that there's nothing in here that affects the interaction between the trooper and the driver. This is really assessing these important points that have been made by the bill's author and by the chair about just the concern about there being disparities. And so in that way, I guess I'll disagree respectfully with Representative O'Neill that it seems to me that and concerns expressed by others as well. But what really matters is the perception by the trooper, by the officer, and simply having that information. And so in that way, and I was looking, Representative O'Neill, at the definitions of sex and gender, and make those distinctions that in fact how what may be in the mind of the trooper is the information that is recorded. It's very explicit that there's not supposed to be any interaction based on or a discussion or asking anything of the driver, which might impact the stop, but instead simply using their observation. So in any case, I think this is very strong. I don't view this as being problematic at all. In fact, view it as being very helpful. And I'm so grateful to you, Representative Hornstein, for the bill, and certainly for the families who've been pushing this. And boy, I sure hope that this is the year that this can become law. So thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Representative Pinto. Any other questions or comments? Representative Johnson.
Chair Mariani, this is a bill that I know is going to pass. Overall, part of it I support. We've heard some very emotional testimony, but the tough part is we have to overlook the emotion. We have to legislate on facts, because when you do go by emotions, we usually get it wrong. I do have some concerns on this, and anybody's asked me, I've always told people, I don't want to disenfranchise the low income and even the middle income. I don't know if you know it, but I looked it up today. The average age of a car in Minnesota is 12 years old. Bluetooth and sync and all that technology didn't start even being installed in cars at a 50% ratio till about 2014. In 2016, only 86% of the cars made were even installed. I recently purchased a car, the 2008. I've tried 3 different items to try to get that one touch in my car. I can get down to 3 touches when I'm down here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. I get out of the metro area, it doesn't work very well. And if I don't have in a 3 LTE area, my Siri on my phone doesn't even work at all. And you get outside the greater metro area, we have a lot of areas that do not have LTE. So Siri will not work to make your phone call for you. So I struggle with this because I'm trying to find a way to get this to work and work throughout the state of Minnesota. So those who aren't, who can't afford a car that's less than 3 years old, 3 to 4 years old, that has this technology. Yes, can I get it for my $3,000 beater? Yeah, but once I figured out the cost, it's $1,000 to get it installed in my car. So it makes me struggle. Are we setting this up to be a huge disadvantage to the low-income people in the state that cannot afford a car that has this capability, forcing them to break the law that we passed. Now, Representative Considine has a bill coming up that was pretty much similar to what I had in the omnibus bill last year. And I think that's a good bill, a good way to go. Listening to the testimony, it's very heartbreaking. And last year, listening to all of it, the biggest thing at the end of everybody's testimony was the lack of penalty for the person who was driving distracted. They were getting just a ticket. They weren't even getting jail time. And the bill that Representative Considine has solves that issue. Yes, is hands-free coming? Absolutely. But we have to make sure when we do that, that we don't disenfranchise people.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. You and I have had a short conversation about this in passing in the hallway, and I actually share some of your concerns in this regard. And absolutely, like you, not meaning any harm or ill will or spite to the victims and their families and their beloved lost ones. It is the nature of lawmaking, right, that we all often have to wrestle with all sorts of different outcomes of our laws and how they're applied, et cetera. Quite frankly, it's part of the reason why I really did want to push this data provision so that we understood, what is going on in terms of the broader society's understanding of who's driving. Doesn't quite get at the issue that you've raised, which I think is a righteous issue. I will support this bill, and as you indicated, I suspect, if not all, most of us will, and this probably will be successful. But I think it is important to raise, those areas of concern. I can certainly allow, the author of the bill to comment, but it looks like you also want to add something to that.
I also wanted to add, I had another group contacted me because of the way the definition is in the bill. Finally, I got in front of me. But for it's a two-way communication device. Some industries have gotten in touch with me between taxi cabs. Some of our cities have talked about it. With the two-way radios in the vehicles, they use a radio. It's a handheld communication device. Instead of having mounted radios in the car, they've gone to handheld portable radios. They're concerned, and along with the ham radio industry, because they're not securely or affixed to the vehicle, because they're handheld so they can take them with them, they're going to be affected by this bill as well. And it's the school bus operators, it's the taxi cab drivers, it's the garbage delivery people with the radios in their cars that it could affect it, and that's what their concern is. I just want to make sure it's not intended to do that.
Okay.
Chair Hornstein?
Well, thank you. I mean, I guess I would respond to several of the comments made, maybe all at once here in a package. First of all, I think that Representative O'Neill and Representative Johnson bring up valid concerns. And, I just wanted to say, at least, in terms of the research I did after the chair and others, not just the chair, have expressed some issues around profiling. I, checked with the National Conference of State Legislators and others, and I learned quite a bit over these last few weeks. One is that the state of North Carolina has, on a bipartisan basis, authorized, actually many years ago, the same kind of study that we're talking about today, actually even far more exhaustive. And they got lots of really important data out of that. So this is not unprecedented. I also learned that Minneapolis and St. Paul are doing this kind of data collection. And it has gone well, and it's been very valuable, and it's been very transparent. And so this is just, a very small study with one department measuring, some data on one particular infraction. So, I'm I feel it's important. Again, I've heard it among my constituents. We're having a very robust conversation in the city of Minneapolis right now about traffic stops. And this is something that I think the police and the community are engaged in a very constructive way. So you thanked me, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you for raising this. And again, I've learned a lot over these last few weeks about it. And I think we came up with something that I think can address this concern and start a conversation. It's important to have this conversation here at the state level. So, again, I think with gender and sex, maybe we, I'm willing to take a look at that. The North Carolina bill that I somewhat modeled this off of did have that. So, that's why it's here. But we can have a conversation again with the St. Paul and Minneapolis departments that are doing this kind of data collection and see if they include that, and if so, how they use it. So I'm willing to follow up on that. And I think, again, and Representative Johnson, you raise a very valid concern about issues with people that may not be able to afford some of the technology. I know that, we're still talking about something that maybe can affix the phone to the dashboard like the Lyft and Uber drivers have. There are some cheap, relatively inexpensive alternatives as well. But it's a valid concern, but I don't necessarily know. I hadn't heard that I don't think it would cost $1,000 necessarily to convert a car. But it's a valid concern, and there are alternatives, and I think we need to look at those. And to the last point you made, Representative Johnson, I think that, I don't think this necessarily covers, and we have some experts here in the room that could comment, and I want to answer your question. I don't think that we're really looking at that sort of ham radio operation, but I do want to introduce to the committee very quickly and briefly, Mr. Chair, because I know you have other business, Paul Ossen from the Minnesota Safety Council. His organization is one of the oldest and established groups in the state that works on traffic safety, and he's been very helpful in the development of this bill, and I think can answer your question, Representative Johnson, better than I can. So, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Ossen could answer that, I would appreciate that.
Please, thank you. Welcome to the committee, Mr.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Paul Ossen, AASEN. I'm the president of the Minnesota Safety Council. Mr. Chair, Representative, our understanding is that the smart cell, smartphone penetration in the market is now about 85%. And so that means that, 85 out of 100 cell users are in fact holding a device that can connect to other devices much more readily, so that helps with the concern you raise. I drive a 2012 car. My phone connects to my car. I used to drive a 2007 vehicle. It had a rudimentary early kind of Bluetooth connection that did not work with a contemporary phone, but it had a headphone jack. And so I went to the dollar store and spent $2 on a cable and connected my phone from the headphone jack directly to the dash and was able to use it that way. So there are alternatives. They aren't absolutely across the board. It's not, not every single phone. My mom carries a flip phone. She's 89 years old. That's not going to connect to her car. Mom is also not going to be texting while she's driving, thankfully. And that's the big underpinning to this whole issue is if you feel the need, if you must use your phone while you drive, and I can't underline the if you must, then please use it hands-free. Don't have it in your hand. That's really the goal of the bill in total. The radio issue, this section of law does not affect radio use. If you look at some other states' legislations, they have very complicated hands-free bills that include all kinds of radio systems. This one does not change the radio system regulation in this state. You do potentially have the issue of somebody being mistaken for having a device in their hand, but I think we run that risk with a sandwich or a hamburger as well on some level. So it's not absolutely perfect, but it does not directly affect how those are used.
And Representative Johnson.
Chair Mariani stuff. I just wanted to make sure that the intent was placed in the record, so we have that if it should arise.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Austin. Any other questions? Chair Hornstein, if this motion is successful, your bill will move then to the Judiciary Committee. That offers you yet
Correct.
another opportunity
Yep.
to address any of the issues that have been raised here if they need to be addressed. And a number of us do serve on Chairman Lesch's committee. So with that, I offer you the last words, and
Well,
I'll take the vote.
Mr. Chair, members, thank you. You know, I always learn a lot at these hearings, and it's helpful to have the different stops, and you know, we can make a good bill better, and I think we've done that today, and certainly there's some outstanding issues that should be addressed, and I will look at that very closely. And so I just wanted to thank the committee for hearing the bill and for your, you know, the excellent discussion and the questions that we've had, and I ask for your support.
Terrific. I'm going to wait a few seconds while a couple of our colleagues come down, because we're about to vote. Who made the motion? Do you recall? I'm trying to recall who made the motion on it. It's been a,
Mr. Chair,
who's not here? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Lucero.
do I have an opportunity to ask a few questions?
Representative Lucero, we're about to vote. Good time to have asked those questions.
So I made it by the hair of my chinny chin chin.
Would have been good if you had been here earlier when we had a lengthier conversation. I will, I'll be malleable and give you about a minute to do so.
I appreciate that. I won't ask any questions, just some comments. And I appreciate the indulgence. Several of us are actually sitting up in another committee right now. We're at a bill hearing, so.
You're correct, Representative.
So I just want to go back to the prior conversation that took place earlier, where we had the commissioner making some comments in regards to law enforcement. And as one who has a law enforcement degree, having gone to school, having gone through skills, and was licensed by or gone through the post test, absolutely agree with the commissioner's comments that law enforcement professionals have a high degree of training to see and perform their work without regard to race, ethnicity, et cetera. And the part that's alarming to me is, in fact, his comment was law enforcement professionals do not act on race and ethnicity in making the determination to pull somebody over, for example. What is concerning to me is, regarding the amendment that was adopted, is it does the opposite. It takes those law enforcement professionals who have years of training to not view scenarios and situations with those lens on, and now is specifically directing them to do just the opposite, to view the scenario with the lens of race and ethnicity. And I think that creates a dichotomy that we just need to be concerned about with the bill in its present form. Then the next thing I would just draw attention regarding the bill language, it's on line 1.17 and 1.12 that speaks about the beginning and end of this temporary data gathering. So it begins in August and ends at the end of the year. So that is a 5-month period. And so it's a very small window. And as we know, with the climate here in Minnesota, the different seasons, things can be different. And so we have to be of the understanding that the data collection that's going to take place is only 5 months of 1 year. Second, per the prior conversation, it's the state patrol that's going to perform this. And that's on line 1.19 to 1.10. And the state patrol is overseeing certain highways and interstates in Minnesota. Now, can they go all the areas? Absolutely they can. But their primary focus is not going to be local residential roads, municipalities, et cetera. And so we also have to be cognizant that the data gathering that's going to take place is going to be skewed to one portion or segment of Minnesota rather than cities, local municipalities, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the data that would be collected, it certainly isn't going to be scientific in the data set. And then second, it's going to be based on perception. And then as the conversations that I heard here, and unfortunately, I disagree with the commissioner when he said we would then take the information gathered from a subset of information based on perception and then began to look at that, how we can enact policy. So now we are going to be basing policy on this, in my opinion, flawed information, flawed data. And I have a lot of heartburn over the bill in its present form. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Lucero. We did talk about these points earlier, except for the seasonal one, and you might be singing after my heart because I certainly would like a longer period of time, quite frankly, to do this study appropriately, and that might be an issue for us in judiciary if this bill moves through. I do want to say for the record, members, and we heard from the commissioner earlier, and of course, he's not here to repeat it. The whole point of, one, that profiling is in fact an issue in our society. Two, that law enforcement takes it very seriously, and they work consistently to address it. And that three, one of the tools that they use in order to address it is to, like they did in North Carolina, and they're doing in St. Paul and Minneapolis, is to do these kind of studies. And perception absolutely goes to the heart of the study. It isn't for any other purpose than to be able to properly help our law enforcement to be good professionals. Representative Sarah, we're about to vote. If you feel very strongly about it, we can certainly do a roll call vote if that's your choice. All right, very well. If not, then the chair, since Representative Dean is not here, moves that House File 50, as amended, be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion prevails. Representative Horsing, thank you so
Thank you,
much
Mr.
for working
Chair.
awfully
Thank you,
hard to bring
members.
an important bill before us.
And,
And I do want to thank the families that have been with us throughout the day as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members.
Very well.